Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This is for the week of August 26th, and we're recording it on the 23rd. And this, if you're still counting, is number 167 since the beginning of the pandemic. And the pandemic really isn't over, so keep these masks handy. You're going to need them. All right. I want to welcome you wherever you are, wherever you're going. We're glad you've tuned in. Some of you are listening to the show. Some of you will be watching it. Toward the end, I'll tell you all the different ways you can get it. We've got a good lineup. We're going to have Michael McGraw, our old pal, also known as Michael Piranha, and the Piranha brothers. He's out there in Hawaii, going to give us an update on what's going on. And then we're going to have Carlos Cumpián, poet and an activist in his own right, talking about the late, great Carlos Cortéz. And we're going to welcome Lou Hinkhouse from the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we got a big lineup, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information on a number of things before we get to the guests. It was a great weekend here in the 49th Ward. It's the annual Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. I was mired on my front porch selling my books and photographs, but I did manage to get over there on Sunday evening to see the closing out of both stages. On the east stage was my son, Katie and Lake, Jack Henry James, with his new group called Lake. And then at the other end, kicking it out the jams was Funkadaisy, who gave a great shout out to our co-host, co-producer, sometimes Katie Hogan, because Funkadaisy's very first show was at the Heartland Cafe. And there was a big crowd, and he not only talked about Katie and the Heartland, it was where people were cheering. It really made me lonesome for the old Heartland. But we're glad we're doing the show, and we are doing it by Zoom. So 60 years ago today, and I'm talking on Wednesday, the 23rd, I was in Washington, D.C. for the first March on Washington. And it was a memorable day. I have some photographs from 20 years later when I returned with my son, Jesse, for the 20th anniversary. And I believe now this is the 60th anniversary. So we've come a long way on the civil rights front. We made a lot of advances. It's clearly unearthed some negativity in some sectors of the population in the country. We have a long way to go. You know, we believe that everybody is created equal and has a right to advance, but some people are still trying to change the rules to keep others from being fully vested in the good things in America. Speaking of marches, yesterday I went down to the Buckingham Fountain for the Screen Actors Guild SAG-AFTRA demonstration. Here you go. Got my little booklet here. I got my T-shirt on that they gave me. There it is. For those of you who are watching on YouTube or on CAN TV. And it was a great gathering of actors and supporters, a lot of labor people. A couple of my Rising Up Angry pals, both union guys, Bob Lawson and Peter Kuttner were also there, and a lot of other people. Going to be a while until the strike is settled, and you may want to just start watching other things or turn off the TV. We'll see. I'm going to try and do that a little bit myself. On the labor front, a little bit more, I looked this up, and so far this year, there have been 200 strikes occurring across the U.S., involving more than 320,000 workers. That's compared to 116 strikes and 27,000 workers over the same period in 2021. That information comes out of a labor study program at Cornell University. This is good. The New York Times actually reported today, the 23rd, at the Texas border, some support for Governor Abbott's crackdown is waning. And it goes on to say Abbott's intensive campaign to turn back migrants was initially welcomed on the border, but in Eagle Pass, the effort's main focal point, residents are having second thoughts. That's a good thing. And also, Governor Abbott has been called out for sending migrants to California in the middle of a storm emergency. The group of 37, including a 3-week-old infant, traveled by bus to Los Angeles just in time when officials were warning against driving. Also, on a not-so-good front, on the abortion front, South Carolina's new all-male Supreme Court reversed an earlier decision, and now it's basically a total ban on abortion after 6 weeks. And in Ottawa County, Michigan, I read this in the Washington Post, there's been a reversal on progress. There's a woman there, a sex educator named Heather Alberta. She basically, over a number of years doing sex education, reduced the number of cases of HIV, reduced pregnancies, reduced abortions, and a newly elected right-wing Christian board is unmantling her whole program. It's a good read, and it's in the Washington Post. And you know I like to talk a little sports, and I'm going to start off by saying the White Sox are having a miserable year. As my dad used to say, miserable, miserable. And not only did they trade away some of our best pitchers, they are now floating the idea of a move to somewhere, maybe building a new stadium in Chicago, Illinois, moving to Nashville, where there's a lot of white supremacists, but maybe they have to keep the name the White Sox. But I think it's all posturing for a better deal on their rental of what I still like to call Sox Park. It's got another name these days. Also, I want to give a shout out to Erin Moffitt, DePaul's first cross-country All-American in 2002. She was a runner on a team coached by our pal, our commentator, Gordon Thompson. He remembers hunting for good pasta for her in Terre Haute. She has set high school records in the 10K meters and the 3,000 steeplechase. And now she's in the DePaul University Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations to her and her coach. More on track, the World Championships. Sha'Carri Richardson, you remember, we talked about her on the show. She got tested positive for marijuana, claimed it was at the time of her mother's death and her grieving. Just before the Olympics, the last Olympics, she couldn't run. Well, yesterday or this weekend, she set the new world record, and we're really happy for her. She basically came back with a "here, I told you so," and she did it. The runner-ups were two women from Jamaica. So we got a new fastest woman in the world. It's Sha'Carri Richardson. Go Carri. Okay. I got a call from an old friend who's very much involved in politics around town. And she let me know that in the 32nd Ward, they are starting a new group called the People's 32nd. Some of you may know, some of you listeners or people who have listened to the show, here in the 49th Ward, we have a political organization outside the regular structured Democratic Party. We get along with the local Democratic Party, but we have an independent group called Network 49. And I think over in the 32nd Ward, that's what they're building. They have a teach-in, which is actually, they had one on the 23rd, the day we're recording this, but they have another one coming up. This is all about expanding access to public health. And their second teach-in will be held, I believe, on the 9th of September at Beer Miscuous, 2912 North Lincoln. Anyhow, pay attention, look for the People's 30 Seconds. And last week we had Liz Rathburn, Gordon Thompson, and Mike Klonsky. Liz is the president of the new Students for Democratic Society chapter at University of Illinois, Chicago, and gave us a report on SDS and the Tampa 5, a number of demonstrators protesting the anti-diversity moves of the Florida governor. Gordon Thompson talked a little bit about sports, and Mike Klonsky talked politics. You can get all of that on youtube.com/Heartland Media, where all our shows go up and the individual segments are also broadcast. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of music, and we're going to return in a few minutes with our good friend out there in Hawaii, up early, Michael McGraw, a.k.a. Mike Piranha. Welcome back, everybody, to Live from the Heartland for the week of August 26th. And as soon as the Hawaii wildfires started happening and we learned about them, I started thinking about the few people I know on the island. I got a relative out there. I got a couple of friends. One of my best friends ever in the world is a guy named Michael McGraw. Sometimes he goes by Michael Piranha. Came out of Kelly High School, had a band called Killin' Floor, played at the Rising Up Angry benefits. He's a wonderful guy and a great human being, and I'm glad that he's joining us to fill us in on what's going on. Michael, good morning to you. It's real early for you, a little bit later for me. I think there's a 5-hour difference. And what was that song that we heard coming in?
That was a tilted halo, and good morning to you. Aloha kakahiaka, we say here. Good morning. Uh, that was tilted halo, and that was my contribution to thoughts about climate change. It is on here. Here's my feckless plug. It's from Diamond Head Road.
Diamond Head Road. I got that. I got it in a CD version.
All right, it's track number 4, and it's got a bunch of cool musicians playing on it, and it's Mother Nature's got it wearing a tilted halo these days.
What's that hat you're wearing, Mike?
It says no ka'oi, which is Hawaiian for is the best or none finer. And that is Maui's slogan. Maui no ka'oi is our Maui County slogan. I am not on that island, of course. I am home in Honolulu, which is the state capital of Hawaii, and I am on Oahu, which is the middle of the 8-island chain. I'm in the middle of it. Maui is closer to you, or that's further east, and West Maui is where the devastation occurred.
Well, what you have built this little segment as is another island's point of view. Why don't you fill us in on the disaster that's happened over there on Maui, how you first heard about it, and how people are responding?
I think we heard it was a typical play, as you know, what's going on at the moment, news feed, right? So what we heard was there's brush fires on Maui, but we hear about brush fires on Maui every day in the summer. But then this one's really close to Lahaina, and then minutes later, there's some buildings in Lahaina on fire. Lahaina, of course, was our first capital when we were a territory, and it's been preserved, well, up until recently. And it looks like Nagasaki now, but it was preserved as a historic wooden structured town for 150 years, and it was so beautiful. It's a wonderful place. Great small businesses. McFleetwood owned a club there. There was a Hard Rock there. There was a Moose McGillicuddy's there a while back. There was historic nightclubs and shops there, and they're completely gone, as if it was bombed. None of us have ever seen anything like it, and all of us are just like everybody all over the world. We're just, how could this happen? And it did. There was no water hydrants. It's controlled by the HECO, the electric company controls the release of the water for the fire hydrants. And the power went out on the whole west side of Maui when the fire started. So there was no control over releasing water in the hydrants. There was no water in the fire hydrants.
Michael McGraw, how are people on the other islands, how are they responding to this? I imagine they're jumping in and helping out big time.
Yeah, the Hawaiian word for help is kokua, and the kokua has been gigantic. Not only have the billionaires, the American billionaires who bought up a lot of the real estate on this island contributing, and they all are, but everybody is pulling every dollar out that they can. There's been a lot of money raised, and it's tragic. We're still looking for 1,000 people that we can't account for. So they're asking everybody to take DNA tests. They have missing people. So if they find anything in the remains, but the temperature, the Fahrenheit at the burn site was so high that there's a lot of evidence that can't be recovered. So we don't know who's gone and where they went, but we're just guessing they burned up. It's rough.
I would imagine that's what happens.
Yeah.
There is a lot of talk in the news that we're getting about the fear that speculators will come in, and you mentioned billionaires having homes on the island who are helping the rest of the people on the island. But there is this fear about how it gets redeveloped and after it's cleaned up. It seems like it's a long way off. You got any sense of that?
I think we're looking at a 10-year project to even get Lahaina back to looking like it was someplace. It's not going to. I mean, it was leveled, as you've all seen. That's the footage. I've seen the same footage everybody else has because I have not gone over there. They're asking nobody to visit there, so the local folk, Kanaka, can get themselves, grieve their lost ones, find their belongings, and start to put it all together. Maui lives off tourism, so there's the rest of the island. But I mean, they're just asking a respite, no incoming. Who'd want to visit unless you like looking at absolute desolation? And
is Maui the Big Island, what they call the Big Island?
No, the Big Island is the island of Hawaii, which is to the east of Maui. They're the first coming from the United States mainland. The first island is Hawaii, the Big Island, and that's home to Kona and Hilo and to the active volcanoes. Maui is basically the next island over and surrounded by Lanai, Molokai, and Kahoolawe, which are small islands surrounding Maui. So Maui is the second most populous island, and then the Big Island is third.
So the deaths and the destruction, I mean, I know the fires were burning a lot of places, but the population, except for the 1,000 people plus who are known to be or assumed to be dead, pretty much what's happened on the rest of that island?
Just a whole lot of projects to get food and relief. There's still upcountry fires, and so they need the Kula is upcountry. It's beautiful. Maui's gorgeous. It's just dry, and Kula is still burning, but Kula is a lot of rural land, and so is Lahaina. I mean, Lahaina is a town surrounded by what was dry brush, and that's what happened. It swept. I mean, the wind was 50 miles an hour. Supposedly, a HECO, a Hawaiian Electric Company power line went down in the wind to start the fire. So that's, on the mainland, people like finger pointing a lot. We don't do it so much here, really.
Good.
They're blaming the electric company for not cutting the power during the high winds. But who does that? I mean, this is an absolute unicorn of an event. And as horrific as it is, nobody would ever conceive that this would happen. People are saying, why did they have water cannons in the water so they could blow salt water on the fire? Come on. This is a first-time incident. I can guarantee you Hawaii will bounce back stronger, but we had to go through this. The infrastructure here is a little bit third world. I've always, when I want to make fun of where I've lived for the last 30 years, I just say it's a third world country with a Costco, because there's stuff. We have the most beautiful weather on the planet, and we don't have bike lanes in Honolulu. There is a lot of backwards stuff here, and then there's a lot of forward thinking. There's good social philosophy here, and there's some bad infrastructure, and we have to address it.
Michael, you're one hell of a musician, and I know that you've made your living for however old you are, almost playing music. You play regularly out there. I would imagine that a lot of musicians who are not in Maui would want to be supportive, and there were probably a lot of musicians in Maui, if they're still alive, who are really out of work. What's the situation in your field?
We're like hamlets, right? Because we're all these islands are separated by between 50 and 200 miles of water. So our friends, a lot of Honolulu, we're the 12th largest city in the country. We're the gathering place. We're 1.2 million people in population. We're bigger than Portland. We're bigger than Pittsburgh. It's a big town, and a lot of our musicians go there regularly to play, especially the ones who play traditional slack key and Hawaiian music. So that's going to affect their outer island work. And the outer island musicians who mostly work at resorts, most resorts are, there's no resorts in Lahaina town. There's nothing in Lahaina town now, but the resorts are up country and further to the west and further to the east. So Ka'anapali and places like that, and Kapalua, they're still going to employ musicians, but Lahaina's done. It's shut down. Give it a decade.
What's the population like on that island? I mean, is it, we hear a lot about people, native Hawaiians, concerned about losing their stuff. I mean, is it a lot of newer people, a lot of white people moved in? What's it like there?
It's a scourge. There's white people everywhere. We can't get rid of them. Oh, wait, I'm Irish. 166,000 is what the census says from 2020. So That's the population of Maui. And I guarantee you 100,000 of them are there to serve the millions who come to visit, just like over here. I mean, we're basically a vacation service for most people that work really hard every day and want to come somewhere that's really kind and nice and warm. So yeah, this is like I said, it's a unicorn of an event. We don't know how this plays out, except hopefully we'll do the right things with the funding we get and the donations, and the state will do the right thing. We're being dragged kicking and screaming into modern civilization over here sometimes, you know.
On the news, which is just the news has been filled with scenes from this destructive fire, but I've read reports. I might have sent you one that I think I sent you something, but it talked about how much the federal government has jumped in all kind of ways, and it really sounds very impressive. What's getting some play in the news are some people who are criticizing the federal government for not doing enough. Any theme to that? Anything that's coming up in your life?
I think everybody over here, I mean, well, if you look up Blue State in the encyclopedia, there's a picture of Hawaii. Right? So everybody's happy Joe's president at this point in time because we don't want paper towels tossed at us.
Right on.
So, and I think Biden's reaction has been terrific. We really like our new governor is more of a proactive governor. Dr. Green is more of a proactive governor than Governor Ige ever was, and I think he's doing the very best he can to get things done as quickly as he can without. We're not an alarmist state, and like I said, in the blame game, which is so huge these days, we don't know how to play it over here. We're just grateful for help. And all the finger pointing here are tiny little fingers pointing at stuff that nobody had any control over. This was an act of nature that was completely aberrant. It wasn't, it was a disaster waiting to happen. I don't know. The whole planet's heating up.
Well, that's the truth. We've got, the whole planet is burning up. I mean, there are 19 people, I think, in Turkey just died in a fire, probably migrants. It's going on every time. You talking about the spirit of Hawaii and that people will come back. My hope, I think, would be that Hawaii then would become an example to other places, because it's not going to be the last place that has devastation due to humankind's activity.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the philosophy here is just to keep exuding aloha. I mean, that's what we do, understanding and love. And it really works here. Which reminds me, having known you for only over 50 years.
Long time, buddy.
You'd be a wonderful Hawaiian, James. You let stuff flow through you. You got the memory of a goldfish. You don't house resentment. That's what we do over here. And you'd be a leader over here as you are there.
Well, that I'm planning to come, and I'm going to come this winter. I grew up with my dad telling stories of when he worked through his father, who worked for Libby. He was on a plantation, a pineapple plantation, where he told me he could see Molokai with the leper colony down below. And he always talked about Hawaii, and his younger brother, my last living relative from that of the brothers, my dad's brothers, David, lived in Hawaii, he and his family, and you've met my cousin Adam, I think.
I have.
Some reports on this. He grew up in Hawaii. He went to Punahou High School. Then he played football at Northwestern. Now he's in LA. But we've been talking a lot about Hawaii on the family Zoom. We're going to run out of time here, Mike. Do you have any parting shots you'd like to share to your friends here in Chicago and around the world?
Just aloha nui loa. Love and miss you always. And I'm always looking forward to visits from my closest friends. And you are in my closed hand. My 5 fingers are full of friends. You're one of the fingers, pal. So
well, our birthdays are a day apart. You're the 15th of January. I'm the 16th. Muhammad Ali's the 17th. There's a lot of other January birthdays, but
my wife's mother
if I'm not there on my birthday for you and I to jump in the ocean together, I'll be there soon after or just before.
I have such a chore list for you of things to do around the house.
I'm ready. I'll try to stay limber. All right, I want to thank you, and I really, our hearts go out to you and everyone else in Hawaii, particularly the people who are suffering the most over there. And I know you're doing good. You're trying to make it better, and you'll contribute in all kind of ways. Fill us in again soon, okay, Michael?
You got it. Love you.
All right, we'll be back with more Live from the Heartland. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial. Be right back. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for a week of August 26th. We're going to talk about not only a wobbly, but a great artist, a great poet, the one and only Carlos Cortéz. And the way this is coming about is there was recently an event in memory of Carlos Cortéz, and I thought it would be important to talk about it. And a guy who came to mind was my old friend Carlos Cumpián, who's been a guest on the show before. We go way back. I remember him walking into the Rising Up Angry office on Lincoln Avenue above the Body Politic Theater in 1969. First time I ever met him. Good morning to you, or good afternoon to you, Carlos.
Hey, good afternoon, todos, escuchando our program, listening to the program. Thank you so much, and I'm glad that I'm able to get on this with you. Absolutely right. Carlos Cortéz was an influence in my life way back, not in 1969. I met you before I met Carlos Cortéz. I met Carlos Cortéz in 1970. Yes, in 1970, I met him, and I had just moved up. I decided to get up out of the South Side where I was living, and moved to an area right behind DePaul University, at the corner of Clifton and Belden. A buddy of mine said, I need a roommate, come on and stay with us. And so, yeah, I was able to go there, live there. And one October evening, who comes alongside me, sees me unlocking the door, is this man in this putty-colored hat with a bunch of buttons on it. And I kind of look at the guy, and he says to me, excuse me, you live here? And that kind of frightened me for a second, because it was kind of dark, and I never met the guy. And he's looking at me, and he says, are you a skin? And I said, I had, my hair in braids, and I had a beaded jacket on and stuff about AIM and stuff. And he goes, are you a skin? I thought, oh, this guy's a cop. He wants that. Why is he asking me this question for? And he says, what's that mean? He goes, like an Indian. I said, oh, well, I'm a Chicano, Tejano from, my people are mixed, And he goes, oh, yeah, you live here? I go, yeah, okay. And he goes, oh, so do I. I live around the corner. So I said, wait a second. What's your name? He goes, Carlos. I said, that's my name. And so he called me a tocayo, a namesake. And at that moment, I recognized him as a kindred spirit. And he said, well, look, come around sometime. I live in the apartment. Ring the bell. Come up, and I'll get you a beer. Can you drink? Do you drink? I said, well, occasionally here and there. And so here's the thing, though, Michael. Here's the thing. I had actually had a meeting of the minds with Carlos Cortéz before I physically met him, because I went to the old guild books and I found this anthology there. I was recommended this anthology called Poets of Today, a new American anthology edited by Walter Lowenfels. What's it like to be alive in the U.S. of A. in the world today, post Hiroshima? What's it like to be alive after Nagasaki, Hiroshima? 85 living poets lived to tell it through their poetry. And there was the people like you probably have heard of, everybody's heard of, the Gregory Corso and the Charles Bukowskis. There's even Bob Dylan in here. There's Gary Snyder.
Ferlinghetti, Coney Island of the Mind guy.
Coney Island, Ferlinghetti, all these giants in there, and nestled among them is this guy called Carlos Cortéz. So I was like, And it turns out that what was in there, Michael, wasn't so much just a poem, but it was actually a song. And it was in the Little Red Songbook that the Industrial Workers of the World, IWW, would publish. And it was in there first, and then he got it accepted into this anthology. So there we have it. How I first met him was through reading his work. And lo and behold, as they say, I was shocked to discover the man who just greeted me. And later on, I go up for coffee and I meet his lovely wife. and he asked me about my work and what I'm doing, this, that, and the other, and then I noticed he had artwork, and a lot of people know Carlos Cortéz predominantly for his ability for artwork, and he did a lot of stuff that was based off the Guadalupe Posada skeleton, the Catrina, the stuff that you've seen. He did stuff for many different publications, different books and book covers. So, Carlos Cortéz is predominantly known as like the poster graphic artist. He did some mural work, and but predominantly, again, graphic work. Now,
Carlos, let me jump in here for a second.
Please do.
You were at this event at the Mexican Museum of Fine Art.
Right. You're combining it. It's called the National Museum of Mexican Art. And I was at that event because that's this event that was just held on Sunday, the 13th of August, which would have marked the 100th birthday of Carlos Cortéz, who was born on August 13th of 1923. And this past Sunday, it would have marked his 100th birthday. But Carlos passed away back in January of 2005 at age 82. And here we are 18 years later, still talking about and still interested in his legacy. And there are many young people, not just us old bastards, who are like, hey, who was this Cortéz guy? And like, yeah. And now they've participated. They're looking at his work. They're looking for his work, looking to understand his POV, his point of view, and what he represented. So that exhibit, by the way, will be up for free every day except on Monday when they're closed. But it will be open between 10 to 5 or so every day between now and the end of January 2024. So
there's a Carlos Cortéz exhibit at the Mexican National Museum of Mexican Art.
That is correct.
Until January. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because I need to go down there and check that out. I've got a few, I think I have 3 pieces of his art. I never talked to Carlos that much, but I was around him on a number of occasions, and I did take 2 nice photographs of him, which I assume that we will, for those of you who get to watch this show on CAN TV or on YouTube, we'll have pictures from Carlos's artwork. What do you attribute the enthusiasm of younger people to their appreciation of Carlos? Where's that coming from?
It's coming from a couple of places. One, because I think a lot of people are realizing, number one, being that he was an anarcho-syndicalist, being that he was a union man, okay, a radical union man. We see what do we see? We see the people working at Starbucks getting unionized. We see people getting unionized, going for unions in jobs where we didn't think people were going to have unions. And so who's doing some of that union organizing are the industrial workers of the world. The Wobblies are going in there and doing that. So some of that is the work of the Wobblies. And in the process, they pick up literature and they go back and they look at stuff and they find that, hey, Carlos Cortéz and Fred Thompson, and there were other people that they remember Fred?
I remember Fred. He was the head of the Wobblies when they used to be above the Assyrian restaurant on Halsted, right there at Lincoln and Halsted.
That's right.
And Fullerton. Yeah, I remember him. Actually, I have his old desk, which was also Big Bill Haywood's desk. And it's in storage. But anyhow, I remember, wasn't Carlos Cortéz, he was German and Mexican, as I recall.
Well, that's correct.
Born in Milwaukee?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's right. So he's a real Milwaukee creation here, where you can, the Germans now, and he came by his radicalism. Let's just say his progressive radicalism, whatever term you want to use. He came by it very naturally because his mom was a member of the Young Socialist group back in the day, and his father was actually an active union organizer for the IWW. And his father worked on the railroads of out west, and his father was multilingual. He knew Spanish because he was from Mexico. He learned Spanish, and then he also learned Italian because a lot of Italians were working out on the West Coast. And he picked up Italian because it's, I guess we know it's similar to Spanish. And so he learned Italian and English. And so somehow the man worked his way over to the Midwest, worked his way up into Milwaukee, and met his wife, and they were married. And it was a marriage of politics and customs and culture. And out popped only one child. Hey, who was that? That was Carlos Alfredo Cortéz, Carlos A. Cortéz. And I understand if you study it, he actually took the name very seriously, Cortéz, and then he was proud of it. But then, of course, he knew that there was a guy named Cortéz who wasn't such a nice guy historically, who in fact attacked the Mexicans and overthrew the Aztec Empire and all of that. In the book, the new book that we've just released, and I want to say that if you look for it on the cover, you'll have to see the word Coyohuicat. Coyohuicat means coyote song in the Mexican language of Nahuatl. And so Carlos took that name, Coyote Song, or the Song of the Coyote. He took that name as a result of having done 2 years in Sandstone Federal Prison during the Second World War as a draft resistor. He did not want to go, and for various reasons, but the main thing, he felt like, why am I getting engaged in killing guys I don't know and fighting other workers? That was his position. And he did say this, though. He said, look, if someone could train me up to go and get Adolf Hitler, I would go. But if you're just going to have me go out and shoot Hans and Kurt and these other German boys, I don't know them. I'm not really interested in killing them. And they said, you're going to jail. He said, let's go. So they put him away.
On his woodcuts or these pieces of art, he's got a singing coyote in the corner with his signature.
That's right.
All
So
the time.
you were trying to show that signature. He uses that coyote and the bubble that comes out of the mouth of the coyote, which is kind of the Aztec way of saying something's speaking, something's talking. And so he did that. So the name Coyohuicat. Huicat means a song, and Coyo is the shortened version of coyote. So he combines that, the coyote song. And the name of the new book, which we released last Sunday, is called Coyote Song, Collected Poems and Selected Art of Carlos Cortéz Coyohuicat. And it was edited by David Ranney and myself. And you'd probably maybe heard of David Ranney.
I don't know if I have.
You don't know? Okay. David Ranney has written a number of books. Maybe you recognize this name, Living and Dying on the Factory Floor. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I think I have.
Okay. And so he's the author of that book. Anyway,
Carlos, let me ask you to, we're going to run out of time. I want you to tell us one more time where Carlos Cortéz's artwork is showing at the museum, how long, and then tell us a little bit about what you're working on till we run out of time.
Okay. Well, first of all, if you make your way to 1852 West 19th Street, 1852 West 19th Street, you will go to the National Museum of Mexican Art, and you can get in. You can leave a donation, but it's free to enter, and you can see the work of Carlos Cortéz and many other artists there. There's a special prints and paintings of his work, rare stuff. It will be near the West Wing. You can go there and check that out. It will be up. Actually, it goes down. The actual date is February 18th. I said to the end of January just to get you in there. But you can go all the way from now, here in August, to February 18th of 2024. Get in there and see his exhibit. That's really important to y'all. And pick up a copy, if you wish, of the Coyote Song, Collected Poems and Selected Art, which is available there. And very few places are carrying his work, but he is an accomplished poet. Some of you remember that he did do a book called Where Are the Voices? And also he did a book called Crystal Gazing, the Amber Fluid, and other wobbly songs, poems rather. And those were done with the Charles H. Kerr crew. And he also did with Marcha Brasso Press. He did a book called De Kansas a Califas and Back to Chicago. And so we can find all those poems and far more that were collected in the Industrial Worker newspaper and in other places like Frog Pond, or even I think the Seed, and other places that you wouldn't even know where he got published. We found all of that and put it together in the book. It took us 18 months of labor to really haggle it out and work it through, and finally put it together so that for any of the person that would be curious to see it, to read it.
Well, the last time I was at the National Museum of Mexican Art was an event that was bringing out a new book you have out. So you want to give us a little bit on your last publication?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking. My last publication is my fifth book, actually, and my fifth book is called Human Cicada. Human Cicada.
That's right, yeah.
Human Cicada was a result of how many years? I don't know, 11 years. It took, I called it like a cicada process. So it took about 11 years for me to work it out to come out with a new book, which I published with the help of a woman who runs a press out of New Mexico. And her name is Odilia Rodriguez, and she runs the Prickly Pear Publishing Company. And she looked at my manuscript and let me run with it. And so that book is available. We're doing well with it. It's actually selling well. It's available and people can find it. It also should be available at the community. It's actually currently available at Community Pilsen Books on 18th Street. It's also available at City Lit Books in Logan Square and at the National Museum of Mexican Art store. So there's not a lot of places carrying it, but if you're in Chicago, those are places. And I think you can find it on, I may dare say, Amazon. So
okay, comrade, brother. Carlos Cumpián, thanks for coming on and sharing this information about Carlos Cortéz. The two of you are hell of guys, is all I could say.
All right. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Hasta luego y buena suerte. Muchas felicidades.
La vista, cabrón.
Everybody else, stay tuned here for more Live from the Heartland. We'll be back with someone from the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Really brings me a lot of pleasure to bring on a new friend, someone that our music producer, Lynn Orman, found for us. He's the one and only Lou Hinkhouse, and he is the media representative for the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66. Right? I got it right.
Media chairman.
Media chairman. Good afternoon. Well, I didn't know about this museum. I want you to tell us about it. I do know a little bit about Route 66. Actually, in 1960, I drove across country and I took Route 66 from Illinois all the way to somewhere in New Mexico, I think Santa Rosa, when I cut down through Alamogordo and White Sands, et cetera, on my way to California. But I drove a hot rod Ford with an Olds engine across Route 66, and I'm going to come out and see the museum. Why don't you give us a little bit of what goes on at the museum? What's going on?
Wow. Sometimes we have to hear about your story.
I got a lot of
great documentary. But yeah, the museum, I've been on the board for 5 years. It's the brainchild of Ron Romero, who's the chairman. And sometimes people say, well, why is it in Joliet? And the reason is, Ron's from the Joliet area, and Joliet's got a lot of cool mojo going to it. It's got the Rialto, which is a beautiful music venue that's been around, and people like Buddy Guy love Joliet and love the Rialto. And so Ron was able to secure a building. So we've had a building for 3 years, and we're just it's open to the public now, but we haven't really started our exhibits yet. But we have had, this is our third annual Hall of Fame where we induct great Illinois artists. And in the past, we've inducted REO Speedwagon, Styx, and the Buckinghams, among many others. This year, we're inducting the Shadows of Night and John Prine. I think the highlight of that night is going to be Bonnie Kolak singing and sharing her memories of John Prine, who I don't know if you probably know, she was pretty instrumental when he first started. She really encouraged him because he was just a mailman. And he wasn't
sure the United States Postal Service.
Right. And he was kind of timid, I guess, at the Quiet Night. And she saw one of his first performance, and she said, "You're the real deal. You got to do this." And so they were extremely close. And then that's a Sunday night on September 17th. The night before that, and that's at the Rialto, which is beautiful. The Rialto is like, a jewel of the Illinois, Midwest. And then the night before that, the 16th, Saturday, is going to be at the Forge. We're calling it the VIP pre-party. And that's going to be a rock and roll blowout. It's got Shoes coming, who are Zion, Illinois, Electra Records, power pop legends. And they are bringing in Rick Menk to play drums, who's a power pop legend on his own. He's played with Matthew Sweet, Liz Phair, Velvet Crush. Then we've also got one of the boys. I don't know if you're familiar with the band The Boys from Illinois. They were on Sony, I think, and they had 2 or 3 albums. Dan Buck has a new lineup called One of the Boys. They play the same rowdy style. Then we got the Phil and Gotti, Brad Elvis, Casey McDonough trio, who are another 3, ringers from the Illinois pop era. Then we also have Ralph Covert, another great legend. He's famous for Ralph's World. And
yeah, we've had him on the show.
Oh, he's amazing. I mean, what a talent. There's so much talent. Then to open up, we've got Jen Fuse, who's a band from the area, who's an incredible band led by Lindsay Kent. So it's like so much to get in one night. It's incredible. But I'm just really happy and blessed because those are friends of mine. I asked them if they would contribute, and they all, it's amazing. They all said yes, and they're all really looking forward to it.
So this is an event, really, part of the museum is a Hall of Fame. And you're going to induct Prine, Bob Surratt, and Brian James.
Nat King Cole, Ramsey Lewis.
Those are all, that's right, Illinois. So it's not just rock and roll. It's like...
right, all styles. Earth, Wind, and Fire is going to be inducted. And radio stations, too, where The Loop is going to be inducted, and also Alligator Records will be inducted.
I think we used it on the show. I'm not sure if I did or not, but we were talking to someone about Alligator Records, and I came up with a photograph I had taken back in 79, I think it was. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love that.
So let me be clear. You're going to have this big event. What are the 2 dates? You got one place is at the beautiful theater, and the other one is at a rock and roll venue, right?
Yeah, I know. So Saturday, September 16th, is the VIP pre-party, and that's at the Forge. And the Forge is a 800 capacity venue right across the street from the museum, as a matter of fact, downtown Joliet. Then the Sunday night is the Rialto, which is a major event. And that's I think that's like 2,000, it's a big, beautiful, ornate. It's like the Chicago Theater, so ornate. Kind of like, so that's the main event. The pre-party tickets are only $15. If you want tickets for the Forge, you got to go to their website, theforgelive.com. If you want tickets to the Sunday night, you can go to roadtorock.org, which is our museum website. And I think you could also get them at the Rialto website.
Well, let me ask you, Lou Hinkhouse, how did you get involved with the museum, and what is your line of work? What do you do, and are you a musician? Give us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a video producer, editor by trade, but I just was very fortunate to do a tribute to Lynn Bramer. I've done videos. We did a great video that won an award last year. Bob Surratt interviewed Clark Weber. I've done some great interviews with Bob Surratt at the Chess Records, and we interviewed Gene Barge. So I'm a video producer by trade, and my love is music. I don't know if you can see my records behind me, but I'm a music nut, and so right now I'm combining those two things to my 2 passions. I love creating video and telling stories through video, and that's basically my story in a nutshell. Is that my TV show, The Pulse, is how I started my TV career. And we had the first video ever, the Smashing Pumpkins. So if you go on YouTube and look up Smashing Pumpkins Basement Jam, you'll see me introducing the video. Billy had long hair. It was amazing. It's amazing footage to watch because they were totally different in those days.
Yeah, they were.
Just gotten Jimmy on drums, so they still were kind of like New Order more than Led Zeppelin.
This show you mentioned, The Pulse, is it still on?
The Pulse, no, the Pulse went off the air like in 1991, I started a Vimeo channel, so I could send you a link to if you go to Vimeo, the Pulse Chicago, you'll see videos that we did more recently. But that was a couple years ago. I haven't really aired anything by the Pulse, but we've done some really cool online video stuff. If you look at the Pulse Vimeo, thepulsechicago.com.
Well, you're a hell of an interesting guy. I'm going to have to meet you. I'm going to come out. I won't be in town that weekend, but I will come out to the museum, and you and I should get together. You mentioned Gene Barge. You know, he just had a birthday. I think he's 97.
Yeah.
And, I'm in a number of movies, Andy Davis movies, along with Gene. We're in Under Siege. We hung out in Mobile a lot. I remember we went to a fight one night. And, it was a big arena. Gene's a lot of fun and a great musician.
I'll send you the link. He tells a great story about the Rolling Stones. I mean, Mick and Keith loved Gene. He played with them, You
got anything else you want to share before we sign out?
I think just thank you for the interview, and I really hope people make it out to Joliet. There's trains from all over the state that head to Joliet.
How far is Joliet from Chicago? And I'm glad I never went into the prison out there. I'm fearful of it at certain times in my life.
No, it's if you drive, it's about an hour, but the train ride, I think, is 45 minutes, and I think it has a bar car on it. Yeah, and so the Joliet's kind of central, for a lot of parts of the state, because the museum serves the whole state.
Well, I got to say, I'm glad that your mayor or former mayor didn't become the governor of the state of Illinois.
Right. The new mayor of Joliet is awesome. Darcy, he's fantastic.
You got a new mayor.
Yeah, in Joliet.
Good.
Yeah, Joliet has a fantastic mayor, Darcy.
Well, Lou Hinkhouse from the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum. We want to thank you for coming on live from the Heartland, and you're going to be our friend for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
We'll see you, brother.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. And everybody else out there in our listener land, our viewing land, however you get the show, whether it's on WLUW or whether it's a CAN TV or on youtube.com/Heartland Media, Spotify, Google Podcast. We're glad you listened in. We're glad you watched it, however you did it. We'll be back next week with more live from the Heartland. And remember, there is a future. People can change and continue to do good in the world because the world needs all the good you do. Thank you so much to all our guests, Michael McGraw, Carlos Cumpián, Lou Hinkhouse, our producer, Lynn Orman, our other producers and sometimes host Tom Clark and Katie Hogan, and our engineer, Hal James. All power to the people.